Our technology boom that we're witnessing is because of the entertainment industry from 100 years ago. Because when you do attract the best and the brightest, that spills over into other areas. So a lot of technology has also taken advantage of folks coming here, all this gaming, all the media production, everything that's gone into technology component has been born primarily, I think, through entertainment industry.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This is a very unique conversation, not one we normally get to have on the show, but I was very excited when you guys reached out wanting to have this dialogue because it's deeply important to me, as I know it is to you, the conversation around policy and production, particularly in Los Angeles. I was at the Board of Public Works hearing earlier this year. I saw that you were also there and you spoke. So it just feels like it was a matter of time before we got to intersect. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. So I'd love to start with just a little bit of context of you and your journey. You were born in Tehran, and you were a young boy during the Islamic Revolution when that swept Iran, and then your family fled and came to America when you were 8 years old. And I was actually 8.5 when my family came here from Brazil. So we have that kind of mutual point. But how did you guys end up in Los Angeles?
So thank you for asking that question. I think it's something that's shaped my entire life and career at this point. First of all, we weren't expecting everything to go sideways. I mean, the monarchy in Iran had been in place for 2,800 years. So even when there are some issues going on, you don't necessarily think that the whole thing is just gonna go upside down. So I think my parents were in a place where they thought, you know what, everything will be fine. We'll move forward. But as things progressively got worse, we had to separate. My dad stayed behind. My brother was 16. He was of drafting age, so he needed to flee the country and go to Cyprus right away. Went to a boarding school there. My mother grabbed me, and we came out of the country and came to the U.S. through a circuitous path of going through Syria, Cyprus, Germany, and finally getting our visas and coming here. So it was quite a bit of a process.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the United States, obviously it's a whole new culture. Didn't know the language, didn't know the culture. So I wanted to fit in. And, you go through that awkward stage of trying to fit in while knowing you are extremely different.
Yeah. How did you learn English?
Oh, Charlie's Angels.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say, what shows specifically?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you had Farrah Fawcett and Jacqueline. So you had a great cast, and 8-9-year-old kid watching this stuff. I say that as a joke, but it was several different shows and programs. That was the easiest way of constantly hearing and getting the intonation down.
Yeah.
And then I had some wonderful teachers who didn't give up on me and would constantly push me to adapt quickly.
Yeah.
And that helped a lot.
Yeah, shout out to teachers. Similarly, my second grade teacher, because when I came to America, they actually put me back a whole school year because I didn't speak the language. And the school year was a different timeline in Brazil because the seasons are opposite, et cetera. But I really applaud and commend her specifically for taking time out of her day and really pulling me aside and teaching me the language because there weren't really programs like that at the time when I came. And it was a blend of that and like Reading Rainbow and TGIF and, all kinds of different shows that I watched that really also solidified the language for me. But did your family automatically land in LA, or was it also a big journey to get to Los Angeles?
So it took us a little while. What had happened was my father wanted to make sure that we came here to the United States, got our education, and went back to Iran. So my sister had already arrived here in 79 and
so there's
was
3 of you
enrolled in college. Yes.
Okay.
And that was going to be the plan for my brother and I as well. But with the war erupting, plans changed. And that family separation period was pretty intense because you don't know what's going to happen. So you go from this state of a great deal of comfort as a kid, to a state where you don't know if you're going to become potentially homeless. You went through a very drastic process of losing everything in a very short period of time. So when you come into a new environment and you don't know the language or the culture, you think, well, what if we end up on the street because we lose whatever security we thought we had as well? So those were some of the things that I grappled with, my family grappled with, and I think that also shaped a lot of the way I look at things.
Yeah.
And making sure that I protect what's really important, and we make sure that we, as a society, also protect our ability to function well, so that then we can think ahead and plan for tomorrow rather than just be stuck in today.
Right, right. Was your family pretty transparent with you, your parents, about the transition that you guys were going to undergo?
Everything was up in the air.
Yeah.
So when you're, first of all, exposed to people dying on the street, and the harsh circumstances of revolution and then a war, you know, your parents at that time, I mean, any one of us, whether being parents or not, will not be able to sugarcoat or change or hide things, because everything is exposed, and you're just making sure that you're doing your best at protecting the way I saw my parents do. In any given moment, I could be on the balcony and there would be some kind of a raid or some kind of a march taking place where it would get pretty violent very quickly as well. And then when we came here, obviously when you go through that shock of that big change, you're thinking, okay, once things stabilize, we might go back. But the most important thing was just making sure that the family reunited again, because at that point we were living in 3 different continents. My brother in Cyprus, my sister, my mother and I here, and my dad still in Iran. So it was difficult to cope with the different time zones and the uncertainty of everyone being in different places. That's also when I saw, my mother's stress level, and
I can't even imagine
starting to smoke cigarettes, and so you can just imagine, as an 8-year-old, being worried that I don't want to lose my mother now. So I would hide her cigarettes. It would just go missing. So I would just hide it somewhere. So that she would not be smoking as much.
Yeah. But at a certain point, then it became apparent to your family that you were indeed staying, and then you guys kind of built a home base in the San Fernando Valley, if that's correct. And you still reside there now with your wife and children. Was it a welcoming place at that time? Like, how long did it take you to really start to feel like you had assimilated and were starting to fit in to America?
So there's the realities of the hardship of what you go through. And then once you're in Los Angeles, once you're driving, and initially we were living in Hollywood area, and then we moved to Glendale, and then we moved to the Valley.
Okay.
So within a 4-year period, we had moved to the Valley already. And that's where I spent most of my time growing up. But driving around on the streets, seeing, Hollywood in that era, in the early 80s, with the palm trees. And it was amazing as a kid, experiencing and taking all that in and thinking, wow, this is where I'm at. This is pretty damn amazing.
Yeah. This is Hollywood. I mean, it's iconic, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you already have that impression of Hollywood when you guys came here, of like, even before in Iran, like, I know for me growing up in Brazil, like you knew of Hollywood as a faraway place. And then when you get to move here, it still sometimes feel like surreal that you get to be in a place where so much history in cinema has occurred. Did you have a sense of that already as a kid?
A bit, because my dad was a big film buff. And so he had... he loved Hollywood, and he had formed his, books on different films and everything. I mean, he was a collector. He loved it. And so I had a little bit of that influence coming in. But because of the war also, America was seen as, in Farsi, the word was Vatan, which is paradise. It was the place where you could go to get a restart, a second chance, a do-over. So it was so between the combination of the two, there was a lot of positives. It was overwhelming, obviously.
Yeah.
Being able to be in a place where uh, you were in a very difficult spot just moments ago, and here you are, being exposed to like Chuck Mangione or George Benson and some of the music of that
Yeah.
era, especially. But it's things that it reconnects me right now. When every time I hear it, it takes me back to that phase of our lives.
Yeah. That's amazing. And then you eventually end up going to college here. So you went to Cal State Northridge and UCLA, and that's when you felt this pull towards public service. How did you find your calling?
It was all by accident.
As many good things are.
I hope so. I hope so. I wanted to pursue law. Given my experience, given the fact that my grandparents' generation survived the Armenian genocide, so given the combination of constantly being scattered and moving from one place to another, I quickly realized in my teenage years that the power of the rule of law was pretty strong, pretty profound in our country. So if I could learn the law and utilize its application, I can restore a lot of justice. I can work towards making sure that the wrongs of the past are corrected. As I did more and more internships, I came across other programs, applied to this program, Choral Fellows program, that's a year-long kind of a public affairs boot camp. So right at the end of college, applied for that program, got in, did it for a year. That's where I got assigned to work on a campaign for an individual who was running for Congress. He got elected. So then when my Cora year ended, he hired me to work on his staff. And so that's where I kept thinking, okay, I'm going to do this for a year and apply for law school. So that year came and went, and I kept on doing one more thing. So I left the congressional office to run a campaign because I realized if you really want to make a difference, you got to run campaigns. It's one thing for someone to be elected. They come in with their set of ideas. It's important to get people elected who come in and know what the issues are impacting specific communities and how to best address those needs. So I started working on a lot of campaigns, not thinking that I would run for office myself, but one thing led to another. 20 some years later, here I am after having served 10 years in the state legislature and now in city council.
So talk a little bit about your decade from 2012 to 2022. You were in the California State Assembly. What was your time there like? Was it invigorating? Was it frustrating? When you think of the accomplishments you were able to make during that decade, what are you proud of and what do you wish you could have done more of?
So before jumping to that 10 years in the state legislature, I was a staffer for about 14 years.
Okay.
And that's where I had the opportunity to work for 5 different elected officials in different capacities, federal, state, and local. So that shaped my view of how government is interrelated and where the jurisdictions of power are at and who can help with what issue. I basically became a nerd of government. I loved it and I was learning it and I was trying to figure out how you can help while at the same time how the political issues, the outside political stuff impacts governance because it's intertwined.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, in that time that I was a staffer, the state would have been the last place that I would ever, if I was going to run for office, that I was going to pursue.
Why?
Because I realized very early on the best places to be in the city, especially LA City. You are directly engaged with your residents, with your constituents. You're not going far away to serve your constituents either. You're not in the state capitol or in the or DC in the federal capital. You're right here in your own city. And so you get to address the issues in a meaningful way. You're constantly solving problems. You're a social engineer that's trying to fix issues constantly. Sometimes it's not even entirely in your purview. You need to get other agencies involved, whether state, county, federal. And then sometimes you need to figure out how to partner with the private sector or nonprofit sector in order to advance what you're trying to achieve. But the city just allowed you the ability to maneuver quite a bit. Given a series of different things that happened, I had an opportunity to run for state. I decided not to. 2 years later, redistricting happened and another opportunity came up. At this point, it was a new district that had been formed in the San Fernando Valley that had a little piece of all the areas that I had worked as a staffer for different electeds, the previous elected officials I'd worked for. So I decided to jump in. Ended up winning. It was a very competitive race where I had an opponent that outspent me like 7-1 because he was getting financing from a billionaire coalition. This was back in 2012, and $2.5 million in a state race was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that happened, got into office. I had already started working on the film tax credit. I was a chief of staff to another assembly member prior to that. And I had worked on drafting the initial bill of the $100 million.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I was in the legislature, I wanted to continue to work on that and expand that. And at the same time, work in other areas, water, transportation. The state in between 2012 and 2022 saw a tremendous growth due to capital gains, increased property values contributed as well. So there was a lot of different financial benefits. My first budget that I voted on in 2013 was $155 billion. My last budget that I voted on was roughly $300 billion. Wow. So you could just see right there, doubled in a matter of 10 years.
How much of that was due to production and the stimulation that we experienced because of the streamers and the insane volume of content creation?
Oh, I'm going to disappoint you by saying this, but it's a small amount.
Is it? Okay.
It is, because so much of it was capital gains, the stock market. And when we went through the property value increases that we saw from 2006, mid 2000s, all the way to 2020 period, with every iteration of property value growth, that's just a lot more property tax money coming into the state coffers as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of those changes contributed to the budgetary growth. And you can't spend all that money hiring staff. So what we would do was invested in programs. So you saw education programming go up. You saw healthcare go up. We were finally able at the state level to provide healthcare for every single resident in the state of California, including undocumented residents. So we actually achieved some great things in that period of time because we had the funding wherewithal to be able to do it. On the filming end, what we ended up doing was expanding it from $100 million back in 2009 to $330 million. It was a great step. We knew it wasn't enough, but it was a great step of tripling it and see where that would take us. Soon after we did that, obviously, many other states started increasing their investments as well. But what was also happening was just a change in the industry itself. Streaming was going up. So whatever we were losing in tentpole productions in the region, because by 2013 we had lost almost all tentpole productions. But what was taking its place was all of the content needed for all the new platforms we had available.
So it wasn't alarming, I guess, to city officials at that time because it almost was a replacement of, yes, tentpole films are leaving, chasing tax credits, tax incentives all over the world, but there was such a volume that got turned up because of the boom of content creation. So it didn't feel as dire.
At that time, local level, which I was not in local level at that time, but no, you wouldn't see it because you would just see work being done. It's at the macro level, at the 30,000 feet view that you'd see, wait a second, there's these tremendous changes happening. These major productions are leaving. I mean, you look at numbers. In 2003, we had 7 of let's say the 12 blockbuster films shot in California. By 2013, we had almost none.
Right.
So when you just look at those stark contrasts, you realize how much change the industry went through. But again, you weren't feeling the pain necessarily at the local level because folks who would not work on these major tentpole productions were getting
there was other jobs to
gigs
replace it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in some cases, they may have even felt better about it because now there was continuity. Because if the show ran for 7 years, 8 years, that consistency gave them a peace of mind as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. How concerned was the Assembly about the California population exodus when it started happening? Before we even get into production, are the numbers of people leaving in this last decade especially, were they truly troubling, or is it just exaggerated for pundit talking points?
So I really appreciate the way you framed the question. It's a combination of a lot of things. First of all, our population growth in the last 20 years has changed a lot. In the mid-2000s, we had about almost 700,000 childbirths. By the mid-2010s, it had dropped to almost 500,000. So that in itself is a tremendous difference.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what else happened? In 2016, we had the person get elected who's currently in office now again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with him coming to power in 2016 and all the immigration issues that happened, places like Texas and California felt it the most because the immigration patterns we would have to come in and work here started drying up.
Mm-hmm.
So our construction, agricultural jobs were the first ones to feel it most. That all has economic repercussions that then reverberate over time as well. So it's not that people were necessarily leaving, but it's because trends in childbearing, immigration into the state, and then the crossing of the state boundaries. As people are leaving, there's also new folks coming in.
Right.
I mean, let's not forget just the allure of Hollywood, for example. Mm-hmm. One of the best things about the entertainment industry is that it constantly invites and reinvigorates our population in Los Angeles, because the best and the brightest with the most grit and perseverance are trekking out here to pursue something. Now, even if they don't make it in the industry, they're going to do something else here and apply their creativity and stay here and make something with that creativity, which in itself says so much about the talent pool that we have here in Los Angeles. And above and beyond the industry, that's especially what I don't want us to lose.
Right. And I think, anyone listening would agree, myself included, as a transplant here who's been in LA for almost 20 years, like LA is home. I care deeply about this place, about our ability to not just survive, but thrive here. And, everything you're saying really tracks for me, but this exodus that we've had in production and the talent that's here and the lack of work that has existed or lack thereof of work in the last 5 years. And we were there at the June 20th hearing. And some of the folks who got up on this mic to talk are people I was on set with, when I first started out, when there was that boom of work, and then hearing how deeply impacted at the local level folks have been. It's deeply concerning, and it has been deeply concerning. So with everything you're saying and how this has been a shift away from production here, started with the tentpoles, and then obviously we had the boom of the streamers that has now popped. And then from 2020 really till now, it just feels like the patient has been on the gurney, and we keep looking to the city, to FilmLA, to whomever to help us retain the jobs here so that the people that you're talking about can actually build a life here. And that isn't happening. It's always talked about with a sense of urgency. And I understand that changes and policies and dealing with government and all of that takes a long time. But I guess it's a missing link for me as to why there is that urgency. It's been reiterated time and time again. We heard it in that room on June 20th. It's been very loud this year, particularly around other movements and Stay in LA, of course. So why is it that we're still here? Why is it that it's taken so long?
So First, I got to apologize because when you started talking about people leaving California, my mind directly went to population shifts versus
Well,
the
it's both.
industry
It's
itself.
both. It's
So
population
sorry about
shifts,
that.
but also
Yeah.
industry, because certainly, we obviously saw during the pandemic, so many people, not just in the industry, started to leave California in chase of other, less expensive states to go work remotely or whatnot. And then companies have left California for a variety of reasons, and that pulls a chunk of the population. And while I agree, there's always new dreamers, buses of new dreamers coming, whether or not in our industry. The reality is that there has been this exodus of folks leaving because the opportunity to be here has gotten so expensive that it is not attainable for most people now. And it wasn't like that. When I moved out here, you could get by with a lot less, you know what I mean? Like, and fight for your dreams. And now that just isn't the case.
So it's a couple of things. As a society and leadership, government officials, I think we take it for granted. The industry has been so successful. The industry is responsible for not just making Los Angeles what it is, but making California what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right now,
Yeah.
even now, our technology boom that we're witnessing is because of the entertainment industry from 100 years ago. Because when you do attract the best and the brightest, that spills over into other areas. So a lot of technology has also taken advantage of folks coming here. All this gaming, all the media production, everything that's gone into technology component has been born primarily, I think, through entertainment industry. So one is the effects of the entertainment industry are profound. As it's become also successful, as Los Angeles has grown, it's somewhat hurting under its own weight of success. You have a very small space of land that is now harboring 4 million people. It's 2 million people more than when I got to the United States. And in the 80s, LA was only 2 million. In 40 years, we've seen a doubling of growth. So now it's harder to film on local streets. You get more complaints on local streets. So all of those things have contributed to making it harder to film. And that's just one small example of what you're talking about. I'm not even touching on the fact that technology itself has made it more competitive, because whereas you would have to come to Los Angeles and film something in a studio because the infrastructure and the equipment was here, now you can film using your phone.
Right.
The capability has changed so much that you can do it almost anywhere. And so it's become easier for us to lose our filming to other locations. But what's scary also is when people are constantly being displaced. So to your point about folks leaving, for the most part, folks were not leaving. They were just leaving for 6 months at a time, 8 months at a time, which was very hard on their family, on family life. Now it's become a thing where if they're not even going to have that work, they'd rather go someplace else where they can pay less,
right,
or the cost of living is less. And in all of this, what was really also frustrating and hurtful was to what extent folks from Los Angeles were going to Georgia or elsewhere, getting that next generation of folks ready to work, and then essentially displacing themselves. I mean, we've watched that happen, especially in the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have been a small part of that, seeing that happen from the inside, where we've brought some of the best folks to these third markets. And then 10 years time, we've trained up other workforces, which is fantastic. Like as a nation, we want that, right? It's fantastic for the US as a whole. But having shot in some of these other states that are built around just an incentive, perhaps, and not a workforce, to your point, that has been here for 100 years, that is generational, that is people that choose to be here versus they just fell into it because it's better to be a grip than to work retail, sort of like the vibe in some of these other states. Sometimes there is a lack of care and love for the craft itself that I have felt first and foremost. And so I know that the DNA of the kind of person that chooses to live in LA, New York, or some of these other states where life is harder is just different. Inherently, it is. But I have seen that as we have brought folks to these other states and trained them up, we have done a disservice to ourselves. But it's almost like, what choice do you have? If the option is either go work out of state and make a living for your family, and in the interim, you're also training other people, or don't take the job, but someone else will, probably for half the rate,
Yeah.
What options do you have? And so I think that because of the boom you're talking about, we all just kept our heads down and just focused on the fact that there was so much work. And then we sort of looked up and it all went away, seemingly overnight, but not really, because in conversations with Donna Washington from FilmLA, in conversations with Steve Papazian from Warner Brothers when he was running that, we've seen that this has been decades long of a slow drip of drainage of this being taken from us.
Mm-hmm.
Donna talked about that from the late 90s. She saw permitting numbers start to really plummet. And so the question that, again, that comes back to is like, if we've seen the warning signs time and time again from various corners and avenues of the industry, now 20, 30 years later, we're in this place where it is urgent, it's dire, it's a crisis. Like, how do we solve for X in a market where the entire world is so competitive? I mean, I just came back from 2 weeks in the Canary Islands where, it's 54% incentive on your first $1 million. Like, the U.S. cannot compete with that.
Wow. Yeah.
And the labor is great. The crews are great. Everything, there's so much that they can offer. So it's like, when you have that dangling over you and you are a business person trying to create products that you can sell in a market that has been compressed because of distribution and because of technology and everything that we're seeing, it's such a huge, overwhelming problem that, again, it's like watching all this happen and we're sort of going, yeah, this is all happening, but I'm still not seeing what are we doing to really solve for how we can keep productions here and keep more work here, even though all of these things are still happening and coexisting, and we're aware of that.
So let me answer it also this way. At the state level, what we were trying to do was stay competitive with incentives.
Right.
So
but it took so long.
It did.
It took so long.
It did.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad to see that the Governor Newsom saw the importance and pushed it to even double it above and beyond what we had doubled it when I was there.
Right. Which is a great start.
It's a great start.
But still not competitive
to
other states.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, here's also the thing. There's the revenue part, the incentives part, and then there's the practical application part. This is why I wanted to look at the city and how we're working within the city. That's why I asked for a motion to say, let's look at where duplications are, where inefficiencies are, where challenges are that we can overcome. Because, again, going back to the successes of the industry from the past, it was so rich, so well off, that no one really thought or wanted to even think down the line of where it was going. So no one looked at the numbers and said, well, it's on a trajectory going down, and we need to stem this tide. Because so long as the money was coming in, so long as the receipts were coming in, it was fine. Well, now we're here. We're at a place where there's a generation today that is hungry for this. They've been looking forward to it for a long time. And they're going to be, in the future, they're going to be the ones that are going to be innovating the industry and pushing it to new limits. But if they don't get their chances today, they're not, the future is not going to hold that promise.
That's right.
So that's why it's critical that at the city level, this is just one step that we can do. And it's more of a tweaking it than a revolution. But one of the things I wanted to do with this with this motion was, where are all the inefficiencies? You do a shoot, and it's not unheard of that you might have to have 5 to 7 monitors showing up, whether it's fire, police, rec and parks, FilmLA's own monitor, on and on. Why do we need to have so many monitors? Why can't we get to a place where we're having maybe a limited number of monitors, especially in a tiered system, depending on the production. If the production size isn't that big, then we figure out how we can absorb it. If it's a larger production, I understand you don't want to make a mistake, but on smaller productions, we need to be more flexible. Yeah, and that's the other thing that government has to always keep in mind. We need to be flexible to the needs of our constituents and residents.
Right,
So
right.
if things are changing, which they always are, we need to stay nimble enough to understand how we're meeting the demand of not just today, but where the future it's going to be,
Right.
where the trajectory of whatever we're dealing with is going to be in the future.
But what does it look like to be nimble at the city level when it takes so long to see? By the time you've pivoted, by the time you've moved a degree to the right, like it takes 6 months for that to be felt down the line. So I think from the constituent side, it's hard to see the progress in action because it's almost like these invisible forces happening with us without us being able to see it. And it concerns a lot of people that, it's a lot of talk and no show. With the tiered permitting specifically, I know when Donna was here a couple of months ago now, I know that FilmLA has tried that before and it didn't work. And now they're trying it again. I don't know where they're at with that process. But my understanding is that there have been a lot of very vocal advocates for these changes that you're talking about, not just now in this season. They're louder than they've ever been, but certainly throughout the years. So again, confounding that it's still, given how many people have been sounding the alarm, that it still takes so long to enact some of these things and to find solves for some of these things. This data gathering has happened before. I know in 2021, your predecessor, Paul Krikorian, also began a movement to gather this data. And then last summer, the mayor's office made an executive directive also requesting these similar reports. But where are these reports that can show, again, the progress, where things are broken so that we can actually come up with solutions to fix it?
Yeah. So when the mayor put forward her directive, I was still not in office. So when I got in, I worked with her. I wanted to make sure that we were demonstrating that very progress, because if you don't show steps forward, you're disappointing everyone and you're frustrating everyone and you're running everyone's patience. So I was really happy when she anointed the individual that's going to be responsible and the agency that's going to be responsible. Now, here's some of the challenge with that. Initially, the talk was about maybe appointing someone that was going to potentially be housed in the mayor's office or in a city agency where you're not too certain if it would be the best fit. And there were concerns that if you have it in the mayor's office, this film czar or this, the person that's going to be responsible for being the go-between. Not every administration, mayor's administration, is going to necessarily have the same appreciation for the industry or may empower that individual to work as effectively. So I for one advocated for making sure that it's in a department or an agency that is not running for office every 4 years. That it remains in the Public Works Department so that we make sure that there's continuity. So as electeds come and go, the film department within the city, the film liaison, is staying intact. Small things like this take up some time, and unfortunately, but you need to get it right, because if you don't get it right, then
it just gets pushed down the line. And I think, other administrations, from what I understand, have tried this film liaison role in different ways. But do you feel that now with the appointment of Stephen Kang, which I believe was at the end of August, do you feel like this is now the right move and that this progress you're talking about is actually going to be attainable, quantifiable, and something we can actually look back on and see how the dots are going to connect for progress?
Yes, because he's also staffing up and he's building a unit that is going to be specifically working for the interest of filming. That is what's really critical. You need to make sure that there's a unit, and it's a unit that's well versed within city speak. Not necessarily just coming from the industry. It's great to come from the industry, but you need people in these roles that understand the city so that they know exactly who to call and how to be able to maneuver things so that it's moving at the speed that the production needs
Yeah.
or requires.
Yeah. Though I do think it would have been great to have two individuals, two brains in that as a team instead of one person, when that does come deeply from the production side of things, that can speak production and that can also be nimble and maneuver the bureaucracy of that similarly quickly.
So there are folks that are going to be working on a consulting basis.
Yeah, which is great.
And I think that that's also going to be changing. And I'm not saying this with any level of intelligence, but this is going to be changing over time as well. Because going back to your initial question again about this, what are some of the immediate things and the sense of urgency? Look, one of the things about nimbleness is that we also need to look at how we're meeting the needs of this industry on a very regular basis, every 3 years, every 4 years. There's a reason why we have elections every 4 years or every 2 years, right? Because you're constantly making sure that everyone's checking in. Are the elected officials reading the room well, reading their constituents well as things are changing? This is the same thing. You got to reevaluate how the industry is doing and where the changes are, and then figure out how to adapt the city's requirements based on that. We really haven't done that very well. I mean, government doesn't do that well generally. No one really thought the industry is going away. A lot of these permitting fees weren't even changing. In fact, there are fees in place that haven't changed now also in 15, 20 years, and they're just now being discussed potentially being re-upped.
Yeah.
Increased at this point.
That's crazy.
Which is really out of sync with where the industry is at and how much more of an impact it could potentially have.
Yeah. Again, hope that can be addressed quickly, because that is another huge part of the problem. One of the things I want to talk about is the CLA report. I want to talk through a little bit of the timeline of this report. So from what I understand, on March 27, 3 members from California United and Stay in LA Movement met with you and presented 10 recommendations of permitting reforms, right, for local film and TV production. You submitted that as a city council motion the next day. A month later, April 29th, it gets voted unanimously to direct the Chief Legislative Analyst, CLA, to report back within 30 days on the feasibility of these changes. And so folks understand, and please fill in the gaps here, but it requires input from the LAPD, the LAFD, Parks and Parks, LAWP, DWP rather, DOT, like it's everybody, FilmLA. It's a lot of different entities that have to come together to fill in the gaps of this report. But as of this recording, it's been 150 days since this report was supposedly due, and there's been no public update on its status. Why is that, and when can we get an update?
So, from what I'm being told, because I've been pushing and cajoling and prodding quite a bit, it's going to come out very soon. Very soon? You think this year? What is very soon in government speak? I'm being told within days.
Oh.
So let's just say within, just so that at least I have some safety gap here, within 2 weeks it should be in print and out. Okay. Now, I think it's going to happen before then.
Yeah.
Part of it was I myself was also engaging in a lot of these meetings. I actually set up meetings with all the departments, paralleling whatever the CLA's office was doing. I wanted to meet with all of the different departments and agencies and hear from them firsthand what they were doing. And at some point, I started inviting the CLA staff to join me at these meetings as well, so that they would hear and we would hear each other's questions and understand what's going on. Because it's all about a system. You put in a system that works, that takes as much as possible into consideration, so that it's providing equitable distribution of resources, as well as being able to be nimble to listen and address different concerns. while also paying attention, knowing the differences between, the larger events and the smaller events, and how things are going to not work with one group while work well with another group, right? So I know I'm being very general in saying it this way, but all of this nimbleness is very critical so that we're meeting the needs of the different components within the industry as well.
And once we have this report, what is next? What happens after that?
So what I'm expecting to see in the report are specific recommendations of what changes should be made to the industry. This is going to have input from Stay in LA folks that I've been working with very closely, as well as FilmLA. FilmLA has had several, quite a few suggestions for some time that they've wanted to make, discuss and get across. And then input from various different agencies and departments, as well as input from producers and production companies. So, it was not just the city folks I was also meeting with. It was folks in the industry. And I would invite the CLA's office to come to those meetings as well, just so that they're getting the benefit of how
being in the room. Yeah.
There's one thing when the city operates, but then there's the reality of how the city needs to operate in order to meet the needs of the actual everyday industry work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Your thoughts on this? So President Trump created his own Hollywood team of special ambassadors, right, with Sylvester Stallone, Mel Gibson, Jon Voight, with the hopes of bringing production back that we've lost to some of these foreign countries. It's never really been communicated exactly how they're taking on this task and what they're doing. Has the city had any communication with them? Would you be open to working with them?
I'm open to working with everyone and anyone, because at the end of the day, philosophy aside, you want to make sure that the daily needs of your residents and constituents are met. So I am more than happy to listen and work and figure out where everyone is coming from. I can tell you, for one, I'm very happy that the 3 ambassadors that he appointed also let him know that the tariffs on films are not a very good idea. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
It's very important for us to know that in today's world, the assemblage of film can be done globally. And so just because, let's say most of the film is being made here, doesn't mean that a small component of it isn't coming from abroad.
Right.
And if that's the case, well, then how's that going to play out in a world of tariffs?
It's quite complicated and messy and doesn't make sense.
It is.
But you haven't had any communication with them, meaning has there been any clarity on how the ambassadors would potentially work within the city's office to make some of the progress that they're trying to propose?
I've not reached out, and I've not heard from them. So, but okay. I'm very open to establishing that dialogue. Right now, my goal was what are we doing within the city family to come up with a system that's going to meet the needs of the industry today?
Yeah.
Given where the industry is at today.
Yeah. This is an interesting one that I am just generally curious about on the topic of broader reform and representation. Many Angelenos have expressed long lingering frustrations with the city council structure, right? We're one of the largest, most populous cities in the nation. Yet we only have 15 people elected to represent almost 4 million. I know you were talking about the population has doubled in the last 40 years. New York has 51 city council members. Chicago has 50. Houston has 16, only one more than us, yet their population's half our size. Why is it that a famously liberal and progressive city is so slow to adapt and fairly represent its citizens?
Based on my experience, not based on the headwinds of where things are at.
Yeah.
I will just share this, and I just went through an election, so I answered this question quite a few times. Be careful what you ask for. I myself believe that smaller constituencies are great. you want it to be small so that you are able to listen to everyone. You have a better feel because you're constantly spending time talking to your residents and interacting with them quite a bit more. But here's where the challenge comes. Given the political dynamics of the city, when you have 15 members, each member is able to have a check and balance at a much far greater level of strength than if they were one of 51.
Interesting.
Right? So if you expand the council too much, you're all of a sudden throwing off that check and balance with the executive, with the mayor's office, tremendously. So what the right number is, I'm sure we can figure out, but you never want it to be so overwhelming. In New York, you never hear about a council member's initiative or an alderman's initiative, or in Chicago. It's just a mayor-run city. Well, do we want that to become Los Angeles?
Right.
So the check and balance is critical. And second, I would also say, be careful what you ask for, because once you get a large city council, then the representative or the council president becomes the main spokesperson. So even if you're trying to do something, I came from the legislature. We had a strong speaker structure. Even if there was things in my district that I wanted to get done, I needed to go get the blessing from the speaker. So when you have a very powerful figure leading the body, the institution, then it becomes a lot harder to do things locally. And especially at the city level, you want to be nimble in order to meet the needs of your constituents and your residents.
Yeah. Interesting. So you're coming up on a year now in your city council service. How are you feeling about the city's immediate future?
I'll say it this way. I feel like I'm driving in a blizzard with my windshield wipers broken. Now, I knew what city was going to be like. So that part I was not a stranger to. What I did not expect is just these horrific raids that are just nonstop attacking our communities. I mean, it's almost as if you're being invaded by your own federal government. That's what this is.
Yeah.
And the fires in the Palisades of historic level and significance have been overwhelming. So between the fires, the raids, and the budgetary issues that we went through in March and April and May, all of the combination of these things has just made it all the more challenging, given already all the needs we had. Here I came in wanting to have an impact in the film industry and water and transportation and housing needs. We need to increase our housing pool.
Yeah.
And so you want to formulate and start working and making specific dents in your district so that then it starts somewhere and then you emulate it in other places and make sure that you're expanding that. But it went from that to now constantly reacting to what our federal government is doing. So it's been a little challenging on that front. Despite all of this, I'm extremely optimistic. You have to be very optimistic to be doing this.
Yeah.
I do see that we can make a big dent. I do believe in Los Angeles. I do believe in the creative and that grit that I was talking about before that we have here. And I think that we're gonna overcome all this.
Yeah.
On a very personal level, I remind the public and I remind the media and everyone who's listening, our country has gone through so many circumstances where we're constantly apologizing for our past behavior and actions, for enslaving human beings, for putting people in camps and internment camps who were born here, but they don't look like us. I mean, we've made these mistakes so many times, and yet we're doing it now all over again, not considering how horrible of an impact and distrust it's going to create for generations to come.
Yeah.
And, I thought we already from the wars we had in Afghanistan and Iraq and the constant bombing that we prevailed upon them, there's generations of hate against Americans in the Middle East and Asia. Now we're developing generations of hate to come in domestically, and that concerns me a great deal. I don't want neighbors to be feeling a certain sense of distrust or whether they can ever trust their government again.
Yeah. I mean, amen to that. And I do wonder and feel like perhaps the 2028 Olympics will be a really great opportunity, right, to reshape global perceptions of the U.S., of Los Angeles. And I think that's a gift that we have. Yeah. What story about this city do you think deserves to be told?
And I so appreciate you weaving in and talking about the Olympics and next year's World Cup as well.
Yes,
because
and the World Cup. How can I forget?
when I wanted to speak about that optimism that I have, I was actually going to tie in those things, but I focused on how this year has been going and the challenges from this because of this year. But I'm extremely optimistic about the Olympics. I think it's going to be great having it in Los Angeles. I think that there is, given everything we're going through right now, enough people aren't able to feel that excitement and start planning and looking forward to it. But there's a lot to be looking forward to. We're going to be welcoming the world in a very short period of time. We need to be ready to host them. We need to have our transportation systems in place. We need to have our housing in place. I mean, we're struggling with housing. We're going to have a lot of folks coming in as well. So we're going to need to figure out how to be able to welcome them in while not displacing our own residents. Yeah. And we're still in this place where we're trying to working on addressing our homeless residents and population in Los Angeles. You know, and this is something that is of federal government need and proportions, but we're not getting the federal assistance that we need.
Yeah.
You know, when one thing that's not really being talked about when it comes to homeless related issues is that when folks are migrating here from other states, that in itself requires the federal government to step in and provide us the funding we need. But that's not happening. Mm-hmm. So it's borne upon California and Los Angeles to figure out how to address it, and predominantly Los Angeles.
Right.
So, and when you have something where for decades on end we haven't really addressed this issue well, we're now addressing it while it's in its crisis level.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to see progress being made, but we are making progress on that front. What I just don't want to happen is for all of a sudden the homeless population to be completely displaced for the Olympics and not really address the issues and their needs long term.
Correct.
So we got our work cut out for us.
Yeah, I mean, clock is ticking. It's not a lot to do, a lot of crises to solve for in a very short amount of time. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on and discussing all of these very important topics that matter deeply to me, to listeners, and to you. I really am grateful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.